welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. Today's guest is one of my old teammates times two. So we were actually teammates together at Devine, and then we were teammates together at Absolute as well. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with this guy. He's an OG from way back. He has his own academy now, Besnek Jiu Jitsu, which is in the northern suburbs of Melbourne. And he was previously a lecturer at La Trobe University, so he's a really intelligent guy. We're looking forward to chatting with him today. He is Murat Besnek. Thanks for joining us, Murat.
Nice to be here, sir.
Mate, thank you for coming on, Murat. We appreciate it. We always try and find stories out about guests, and Kim does all the background stuff on that. Mate, have you got any stories about Kim?
Well, I've got some, but we'll leave that to another day.
Thank you very much. He knows how to play the game. He's smooth.
No, Kim's always been good. So.
One of my first memories of Murat actually was he and I traveled to, I think, my first interstate comp together. I was a blue belt. I think he might have been a brown belt at the time. We went to Tasmania to do the Tasmanian state. So for all the young whippersnappers out there, back in the day, they didn't have tournaments like every weekend or every other weekend in your local city. You had to travel around Australia, quite frankly, in order to get other competition experiences. So, yeah, Murat and I got on a Jetstar plane and, took a trip down to Launceston just so that we could get some extra matches because that's what you had to do back in 2012 or 2013 or whatever it was when we were teammates together. So maybe let's start, Murat, with the beginning of your jiu-jitsu journey. How'd you get started on the mats?
That's a long time ago, but basically it really didn't start through jiu-jitsu. So I was playing professional basketball, and then I was kind of given the option to continue with my university or keep going professionally with basketball. They wanted me to train twice a day, and it was not really possible studying. So rather than being kicked out of the house by my dad, I chose the university option. And so I was quite fit and healthy. And I met one of my, mentors at uni. And he'd done some wrestling or some jiu-jitsu. And he said, why don't you come and do some exercise? Yeah, we'll have a roll. And I didn't know anything about it. I never did martial arts as a kid. So I went in and, I got submitted pretty quickly. So it kind of, got my attention. And I'd probably do this, 2 or 3 times a week as a hobby. And it gave me a chance to, hang out with him and that group, which were much older than me, 10, 15 years older. But he was very intelligent and knew the university world really well, which I didn't. So it really, and I needed help coming from training professionally to, studying full time. So that's how it began, Kim. And then he decided to leave to Turkey, and he said, "Look, I'll take you to this place," because he saw I was really interested, and he said, "Look, it's called Devine. It's in St Kilda. It's very far from him, but not from me. I was living in Collingwood at the time and traveling to Bundoora to La Trobe." And I remember going in the first session, the first roll. I don't know if you remember, Kim, but it was art, and you know how strong he was. I had a roll and he just mauled me, and I was thinking, okay, this place is totally different.
Art came to my wedding, actually, Murat. He and Sonny, they're living in Adelaide now. Okay. They've got a couple of kids as well together. So, yeah.
I've seen some photos on Facebook, but I remember Sonny as well. They were both such nice people. So that's how it began. And then I met, Pete. And he was also, I thought after finishing my honors, starting my PhD, I was thinking of quitting, and he really pushed me to not quit, to say that, look, it'll actually help your PhD. and it keep you kind of on the right path. And now looking back, it's kind of some of the recommendations that I give to my, I guess, I don't know if I should call them students, but people who attend my gym, that it gave me discipline. Because I think if I wasn't doing jiu-jitsu, I probably would have been drinking and partying while studying. So staying healthy, training, keeping my mind fresh actually helped me a lot during my PhD and finishing that. And I did thank Pete in the start of as one of the people at the start of my PhD. So so that's how it began. I met Kim there. She joined a bit later on, I think through James Tomlinson. So that's how I met Kim, and James was good friends with Art.
So what year was this, Murat? So like we're talking about Kim started and then you were a brown belt or something like that. Like,
No, I wasn't a brown belt. I was at that time. I would have been
2009. So when did you start?
I would have been like a blue belt. She would have been a white belt. Yeah.
So I would have been. So this is like 2006, 2007 or something.
Yeah, maybe? About 2007, 2008. Yeah, I would have gone the first time. Actually, no, it would have been 2006. Yeah, around there. I would have met Pete for the first time. And then I think I was a bit hesitant, like I said, because of the experience. I mean, this was the best academy in Australia. Like looking back, you had this old school gym with 80 people. You had to line up to really get a roll. There was no room. And every time you got in a sweep submit, you would be out pretty quickly. So what was, and you know, Pete didn't have the option to be able to go and, you know, talk to everybody and say, look, it's going to be all right. Continue your journey. There was so many people coming in and out. So I think I did go away a little bit and then came back. And then I just committed full time after that. Full time meaning we used to train 3 days a week there. So it was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when Pete was there.
Murat, tell our listeners about that sweep submit stuff that we used to do, because I don't know that people do that as much now. Like,
well, that's all. If you talk to anyone from my gym, that's all we do outside of Tuesdays, which is our competition night, and that's where we do rolling. So majority of my classes, which I learned off Pete, and that's really how I run my classes. Same way with banter and that, you know, a lot more informal than, you know, some other gyms. But sweep submit basically, and I'll talk about the advantages and why I adopt it. But you line up and sometimes we work in a specific guard, or I give them an option to choose whichever guard they like. And the person comes in and tries to pass them, and the person inside has to sweep or submit them, and the winner stays in. So in this way, I feel that, I guess, the advantage here is that people don't feel bad losing. So they are generally more experimental. Whereas, you know, like if I say, okay, let's roll, people take it a lot more personal. So then they seem to shut down and not open up. And that, I think, stops their development. So I think it becomes a lot more playful and a lot less, I guess, you know, anger and disappointment during these drills. And if people want to stay back and do a round, and if they've got competition, that's the good thing with my gym, is that my members have 24/7 access. So, and I kind of adopt what I've been through personally. I don't teach things or do things that I haven't experimented or experienced, just because I've heard it somewhere else or, you know, seen it online. So the way we train, you remember, Kim, I mean, we'd have a class from Tiago, but if we wanted to do a second class in the day, it'd be me, you know, Aaron Dempsey, or, you know, Patrick, or a few other guys, and we would get together and we would drill and practice moves and do our conditioning. And that's what I offer at my gym. So I'll have a class or sometimes 2 classes a day, but the gym is also open. So if they want to do a class on a different day or a different time, they're welcome to do that to prepare for competition or whatever their goals are. But so that's the advantage of sweep submit.
Mate. Tell us a wee bit about the gym. So when did you start it, and why did you start it? And then we'll go back again into your journey. But we're talking about your gym. So, give us a rundown on that.
Yep. So basically, around 2000 and probably 14, I was training predominantly from 2012 to 2014 at Absolute with Tiago, and that was because I'd finished my PhD, and then I started working as an academic, and I'd been offered a job at La Trobe full time prior to finishing my PhD, but I didn't take it because I didn't want it to distract me. And I've seen a lot of people who end up getting distracted and never finishing their PhD because they end up starting work. But by the time I finished it, La Trobe was slowly starting to minimize their economics department. So I had to look for work elsewhere, and I was working at RMIT. So it worked perfectly to be able to train twice a day at Absolute. And that's why I moved from the Beans to Absolute. And I explained that to Peter, that it was very difficult to get to St Kilda because I was still very new as an academic. So I didn't really have a lot of options. I had to take what they gave me, and that would vary in times when I had to lecture and shoot and research. So, but anyway, so about 2014, I got a lot more free with my movement from universities, and but I couldn't travel all the way to the city of St Kilda when I had my daughter, which is my second child. So I was training with Jason Caulfield at Derrimut during that time on like stretching mats, and yeah, so. And then we started to get kicked out at some point because people were stretching and we were going to fall on top of them. And we were planning on opening a gym together with Jason Caulfield so that we can train. He was living in Greensboro at the time. He's moved now quite far. Yeah, so, and then I had another friend from wrestling who was a Muay Thai MMA fighter, and he wanted some training for his MMA fight. And then he opened a gym, but he was only using it 3 days. He said, why don't you kind of rent it off me for 3 days? So during these roles with Jason, we met people because so many people go to Derrimut and they'd know him and me and say, can we have a role? You know, you got 2 black belts there, and we'd invite them. So we had a group of guys, and I asked them, look, do you want to do this? And we'll pay for the rent. I'll charge the membership according to the rent. And that's how it began. And that gym was Viva Fitness. It still exists. It's like a big company like Derrimut, and they offered us a space. And then my kickboxing friend, he left, and I've taken over that space 7 days a week. And now they moved location. They were at Keon Park, but now we're in like I said, on that border of Thomastown, Bundoora, on Settlement Road. So if you walk into the gym, you'll have like a Derrimut set out women's gym, and then on the top floor is where my mats are and where we roll.
So you left Pete as a brown belt, yeah?
Yes.
You came to Absolute as a brown belt?
Yeah.
And then you received your black belt from Tiago.
That's right.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about that day?
Yep.
and getting your belt?
Yeah,
and
so,
also just the leaving. I mean, you mentioned you had a conversation with Pete.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
So I was competing a lot. I mean, all the way to that point before leaving Pete's. And I wanted to continue to compete. And I needed to be able to train to be able to compete, or else I was just going to lose. And if you kind of know me, I don't really do competition if I'm not prepared. Again, it's just my personality. It's the way I operate, even at uni. I mean, if I have a test or an exam, I'm always well prepared, or I don't want to do it. So I had to make a change. So I said, look, is it okay if I go and train there? And he said, that's fine. It's better than not training at all. And when I went there, Tiago was one of the best people I've ever met. He was extremely nice to me. And my training partner, who came from St Kilda as well, Aaron Dempsey. And then Tiago said, like, you know, if you're training here, is it okay if you compete for our team? As he was trying to win, you know, team awards. And, you know, I spoke to Pete, and that's what we decided to do, to compete. under Tiago, and I had a really good 2 years there. I mean, I think it was 2013. I was like the top ranked brown belt. I mean, I won about 4 or 5 state championships, and I did win the nationals in my weight at brown belt. And in the following year, and we did go to worlds, no-gi worlds. We went to many places that I'd never done before prior to meeting Tiago. So that was Tiago really pushing us to travel internationally. I'd never traveled before to compete. I'd only done competitions in Australia. And then, I was promoted to black belt, I think after 2 years at Tiago, but I was a brown belt prior to that. So it wasn't like I came there and he gave me a black belt and I left. I was competing under Tiago, and our families became really close. And I still speak to him. But yeah, so it was a good day. Kim, I don't know if you remember, my brother got a blue belt that day, and we got beaten up pretty bad for 3 hours. I mean, so these are some of the stories about me, Kim. Is like I talk a lot of trash. So
yeah,
there was a lot of people.
What happens with an absolute black belt grading, because other gyms I think do it a little bit differently.
Yeah. So, Pete just comes in and gives you a black belt, and you won't know you even received one because he just waits till you're ready, and that's how I received all my other belts. But with Tiago, you had to do a small test, which wasn't really hard, but he asked you to demonstrate certain movements. And then the hardest part was you had to roll for 3 hours straight. And like I said, look, some people, they don't talk a lot and they're loved, so they get a good treatment. But if you talk a lot, it's not a good day. And I'm one of the ones who talk a lot. So there was a lot of people lining up to beat me up. So, and look, they were nicer than I thought they would be. So I didn't get hurt, but I did get a good beating for 3 hours. So
it's 3 hours with a fresh partner every 3 minutes or every 2 minutes?
They just jump in whenever they want.
I can't even remember.
Yeah,
and you have to stay on your back as well. You have to play defensive guard. You can't
if you get on top, they pull you down. So it's another person jumps on top of you and takes you down. So yeah, you're pretty exhausted by the end of it.
And yours was at a time when I think it was even more brutal than when I got my black belt, because they had it was a bit more of a free-for-all, if you don't mind me saying. Like even the gauntlet, you'd had to walk the gauntlet afterwards. I didn't have to do that. So it was quite different back.
It was funny because they were doing the gauntlet on my brother, and I think my mum ran in or something, and Tiago was teasing him for a while. That his mum protected him, and but I think it was Simon who said, "Look, we need to be careful to Tiago, because if people get injured, then there's going to be insurance issues." Because it was kind of getting out of hand, where 3 or 4 people were jumping on the one person, and when you're that fatigued, it's only a matter of time before something happens. And Simon's always been responsible. So I think it was his suggestion that just kind of pull it back a little bit, at least monitor it to make sure no one gets hurt.
They sound like awesome times, mate. So you were saying earlier about when you've had other belts, you've just been given them, so no sort of ceremony or anything like that.
No.
Now that you have your gym, what way do you prefer to do it? Do you prefer to do it the Dabine way, where it's like, here's your belt, sort of carry on? Or do you make a little bit more of a ceremony about it for blue and purple and brown and black belts?
Look, early on, it was more like Pete. But as the gym has grown now, with the number of members I have, it kind of becomes a little bit more obvious that someone's going to get a belt and needs to get a belt. So I've been doing, especially the last year, I've been doing my belts either in the middle or the end of the year. They still don't know who's getting it, but there are belts that's going to be given out. Whereas with Pete, there was not a single day that you could point to and say, this is the day where people will get belts. And it kind of kept you, I think it's a really good strategy looking back. It keeps you training. There's no expectation. Like, you can't just put pressure on the coach to give you a belt, because of this day's coming, this grading's coming, or I've trained 5 years and I deserve the belt now. So there was really none of that. If Pete felt that you deserved the belt, then you would get the belt, and you just had to be patient. There was never a time, in my experience anyway, where he didn't give someone a belt that deserved to get a belt.
Yeah.
So and the way I look at it is, I mean, this has been really my whole life. I mean, I've trained and competed just for the love of the sport. If it was basketball or jiu-jitsu. And I explain that to my students in the sense, look, belts to me is more so that it's fair in competition. So if you're a white belt dominating, it's not fair on the other white belts, so it's time to move and get challenged a little bit at blue, and then, purple and brown. And I think that's where the advantage of the belts come from, because I've done a fair bit of wrestling as well. Like, you could start in wrestling and do wrestling for 1 year. You turn up to a competition, you could be facing someone from, with 15, 20 years of experience who's been to the Olympics and get killed, right? And I've had some friends who've done that and been hurt, like got slammed on their face and got concussed. So the advantage of the belts, I think, is from a competition perspective. And like I tell my students and I tell myself that, look, ultimately the belt's it's not really that important in the sense of, the meaning of how good your jiu-jitsu is. The belt doesn't really determine that, and look, you guys, I think you're all at dominance. But you'll see young kids, blue and purple, they can beat, third degree black belts. And this is the reality. So it's just, it's about competition. And look, there is obviously a meaning of how much time you've put into the sport, but you can't take it personal because I'm a black belt and a blue belt tapped me out or something. The reality of that is it's going to happen with the talent and the youth that people have.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Like, I got my blue and my purple from Pete. And as you said, yeah, you didn't know, it wasn't a set date of the year that you were all going to be graded on the same time and whatever. So I like the fact that it's just when you're ready, because some people, if you miss a grading in some gyms, then you need to wait till the next grading, like another 6 months, just because you happen to be busy on that day. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that. But then again, I got my brown and my black through the ceremony on that day with other people. And so there's benefits to that as well. Like, I think there's sort of a little bit of a bond that you get with the people when you grade with them together on the same day, especially when you have to do something physically hard to do that. So I think there's pros and cons. And another thing too, Brent, that Murat didn't mention, I'm not sure if people are aware, when Pete gives the belt, he doesn't just sort of give it. It's this weird kind of thing where you're rolling. He comes and rolls with you, and then all of a sudden you feel something weird and you turn around and you're like, oh, I've got the new belt in the back of my belt. Like, he sort of tucks it into the belt for you. So is that what happened for you, Murat, with your army?
Yeah, definitely.
Even that's a skill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
It's pretty exciting, you got to admit, though. When you get that belt in that fashion, there's a lot of joy.
It is. And it's sometimes it's special too if you're the only one getting it on that day. Like, there's pros to doing it with a group of people, but it is also nice to be like the center of attention. I remember when I got my blue, I was the only one that night. And so everyone put all the attention on me, which is kind of nice. So, yeah, I feel like what you were saying is true. You sort of, as well, like in terms of how you're rolling in the gym or your competition results, you can kind of feel like, oh, maybe I'm getting closer to getting that next belt. But either way, like, it is, jiu-jitsu is like a patience game all round. So waiting for that belt, like, you kind of you've just got to ride it out and be patient with it. I wanted to ask you, Murat, you touched a bit on your professional or your beginnings in basketball. Can you talk about a little bit about that? I didn't know that much about your basketball background.
Yeah, that's what I played from a very young age till I was about 18. So I don't know. I mean, look, as a junior, I was pretty talented in sport. And looking back again, I didn't get much recommendation from my parents as they don't have a background like that. So, but I was in the stateside for basketball and cricket, and I was doing really, really well statewide in year 7. And then I was, asked to choose one, basically, that I couldn't continue with both. And looking back now, I should have definitely chosen cricket. I just think from genetics, like my height and, later realizing as I got more mature playing, I mean, I was on the same team as Andrew Bogut, who played in the NBA. And looking at him, 7 feet compared to me. So whereas cricket, that's not really a disadvantage. And I was, like I said, in both of them at the top level. So yeah, that's how it began.
Do you think any of the things you learnt there through those sports transitioned to you with jiu-jitsu, or not really?
To be honest, it showed some of the I was one of the things, I guess I had an advantage over other competitors, even in basketball and cricket, was just my mental toughness. And I just thought I was extremely, I just thought I was unbreakable mentally. I would trash talk and I'd get into people's heads and I'd make them, do silly things like push me and get ejected and trip over. And they just but whereas when I got to jiu-jitsu, I was like, okay, wait a second, this is kind of different. I'm on my own here. It's one-on-one. And it was a different type of anxiety compared to what I felt in basketball. Because at basketball, it was 5-on-5. I had my mates behind me, and we were a team. So it wasn't kind of what you mentioned with the belt there. You weren't singled out. It was a team. So it was less pressure. So it was more, I guess, what I felt leaving basketball for jiu-jitsu was that comparison between team sports versus a sport that is, played individually. So I think they both have, I guess, difficulties. But in terms of anxiety, nervousness, pressure, definitely the sports where you're on your own is a lot more difficult. But and then in the team's perspective, managing personalities, right, and being able to uplift others at the same time as yourself is a totally different skill, and that's what you need to be successful in team sports. So it was more of a comparison. I guess it's a learning, like a life experience thing that I took, Kim, rather than translating directly into jiu-jitsu. It was more the fitness that helped me. I was very fit, and lean. So, and that's good for jiu-jitsu. You got to cut weight and, be on weight, be fit. So that perspective helped a lot from basketball and flexibility.
And then what about the learning side of it, Murat? So as an academic, and then obviously as a young person and quite an elite sports person, and then you put all of that sort of mental focus into academics. Did you find that you were better at learning than some other people? Because learning for itself can be quite hard, right? So did you find then learning jiu-jitsu, maybe you retained more knowledge? Do you have any of those sort of thoughts?
Possibly. I don't know. I mean, I can say, we trained, for example, I trained a lot with Kit Dale. And he was one that I would say, he just would do things a lot quicker. So I wasn't one of those. I had to work hard, in terms of sport. And to be honest, even as an academic or, studying, it wasn't like I just got things naturally. I think where I have an advantage is I can focus. Yeah, I can probably, again, I don't know where that comes from, but I can really focus on what I want to do and I can block everything out. And that enables me to be quite successful quickly during that time period. But I'm actually putting in a lot of work. So if I count the hours, it would be a lot of hours, but it's just because I can focus and keep distractions away. So, and the same happened with Jiu Jitsu at a certain point, where I was able to just, focus on that and not get distracted. And the same with basketball and cricket and at uni as well. So yeah, if I had an answer to that question, it'd be more about focus and being able to stay in that zone to learn, rather than just having this natural ability that I just pick up things so quickly. I don't think it was that. Like in jiu-jitsu, the only person, I guess at that gym, maybe you'd know more, Kim, but to me it was like more like Kit Dale. Like he'd pick up things and, get really, advance quite fast compared to
some people, they just can watch something once and, they can do it straight away sort of thing. So I think what you're saying, Murat, is that wasn't necessarily the case for you. Yeah.
I had to drill, I had to study, I had to watch, I had to ask questions. I had to hang out with people like that and learn. And that's where my advantage was. I wasn't shy to ask and learn and focus and put in the time. I actually enjoy that process.
How did you find the transition from Dabine to Absolute? Because to be honest, I found it a little bit challenging. Yeah. As you were saying, like it was quite a different way of learning at Dabine's, where it was pretty fluid. There would be maybe a technique discussed at the start of class, sometimes not actually, but it was very almost like an open mat. And I found it a little bit intimidating, actually, first coming to Absolute as a purple belt and having to be able to, we did a warm up, then we we drilled, we specific trained, and then we rolled sort of thing. How was it for you?
Yeah, the biggest change for me, to be honest, I felt when I moved to Absolute, I definitely needed the second session, because the training time was shorter, because there was, other classes that had to use.
Yeah, it was a 1 hour class, but you might only roll for 20 minutes.
Yeah. So you couldn't, whereas at Pete's, you rock up and you could stay till 10 o'clock. Like you turn up at 6 and you're there for 4 hours. Like it was just open, like Kim said.
To give you some perspective, like there was on the timetable, there was classes, like there was a class from like say 6 to 7:15 and then 7:15 to 8:45. But officially it was like that, but it just kind of rolled into one big class. Every now and then someone would leave, which would be like signify the end of the class, but you didn't really know. There was no kind of formal lining up and the class is officially ended. Everyone just kind of petered out.
The class really lasted 30 minutes if you think about it at the Beans. Like, because it said 6, right? So Pete would probably come in about 6:30. Like it was at least half an hour of rolling prior to class.
He wasn't Brazilian, but he ran on Brazilian time always. Yeah.
So he would show something. We would do sweep submit, and then he'd say free training, right? And then after that, you were on the mat for 2 hours. So you'd take a break, come back, and So I that was the biggest difference for me. That hour, I was like, okay, there's no way this is enough for someone like me. Where we just talked about it. I needed to train and drill, and so that's why it was more. I'd stay back. We'd use the corner of a mat somewhere with one of my training partners, or we would come in half an hour before Tiago's class and do some work in the morning. Yeah, so I think that was the biggest change for me. Whereas after Pete's class, I was done. Like I couldn't move. I was just destroyed because of the people in that class and the hard rolling. And also, if you remember the jigsaw mats, compared to the mats at Absolute. So that was some of the differences. One, there was heating and cooling at Absolute. At Pete's, it was not the same.
Oh, it was very different. I was like, this is so nice. Look at this. Like everything's so, firstly, the class is so structured. And then there's like actual facilities that, like I had a change room. I didn't even have a change room. I had one, but the boys were using the female change room at Dabine. So yeah, it was like it was chalk and cheese for me.
Yeah. So it was a lot rougher back. And look, it kind of changed during that stage. He went from, it's not like Pete's gym was all other gyms were like that from my memory. everyone was the same. But during that time, there was a big change from, I guess, like more amateur to more professional type gyms, and also the inclusion of other martial arts at the same facility. If you remember at the Beans, it was, clearly on the logo, 100% Jiu Jitsu. We had nothing else but Jiu Jitsu at the gym. Whereas, going to Absolute, you had conditioning and Muay Thai and boxing and wrestling, and it was a mixture of martial arts. So, and then I think a lot of gyms started to adopt that approach, as I think it was a lot more successful financially.
Tell us a little bit about your competitive career as well then, Murat. So, obviously as a basketballer, you would have had routines and that sort of thing that you would go through, whether it's the day before or with your team. But now you're a single athlete, right? And you're competing, as we said, it's one-on-one.
Yep.
So did you have things that you would do before the day or the day before or during the day and then just before match time? But did you have routines that you would, specifically do?
I'm definitely, my whole life is based on a routine, to be honest. Again, it's from my personality. But if it was even basketball, it's the same. I go through the same routine that I trained on the comp day. So I think that's what gives me confidence in being able to perform. If I tend to change anything, generally it disrupts my mind, and it could bring doubt into what I'm trying to do. So basketball, even though it was a team sport, you did do a lot of training individually too. But it was just that on that match day, when you're competing, you had 5 other people or 4 other people to help you. Whereas with Jiu-Jitsu, it was one-on-one. You have teammates screaming, but they can't come on the mat. So you're on your own. But yeah, I would go through a routine, and my routine normally was, I'd get there a couple of hours earlier and then, stretch, and then I would drill, and then I would try to really warm up with some rolls. This is with more experience, by the way. When I first started, I had no idea what I was doing. Because Pete made us compete a lot, but Pete wasn't hands-on. Pete didn't come and tell you what to do. He'd give you confidence and just, push you to compete and tell you all the advantages of competing and how it will help you develop. And that was so true. But we didn't really know. I don't know what you experienced, Kim, but I had no idea. I'd turn up and, I always say this, but I'd turn up to the aquatic center and park the car and think to myself, what am I doing here? I'm going to have to fight these guys. Why did I pay to do this thing? That was the feelings as a white blue belt. And look, I wasn't, I lost more than I won. So, but I loved competition. I liked doing it. So I went, and I, slowly started telling my brain, look, it's okay. You're going to enjoy it. It's just, these are the nerves that are going to, happen every single time. But as I got more experience, I know those feelings are going to come, but I just go through what I would do at a normal training session, go through the warm up drill, have a hard roll and get sweating, because normally at comps, if I won my first fight, and back in those days, it was knockout. So it wasn't round robin. So you never got a chance to warm up. So I felt if I won my first fight, that I generally did very well. And if I got knocked out of a comp, it would generally be the first fight. And that's because I just wasn't warm or ready mentally, and you just end up losing and crashing out. And it sucked because, as Kim said at the start, we didn't have many competitions back then. And sometimes you paid a lot of money to travel interstate and you lose first fight, say a couple of minutes later, and you're like, oh man, yeah, I want to fight a little bit more. I think I can do better than that. But then, you had to wait a couple more months to get that chance. So yeah, it was a lot more pressure than what it is now with my students who go to round robin comps, and so get 8 fights. Doesn't matter if you perform, poorly in a couple of those fights, you still get a chance to have a good role. So.
Yeah, but what you're saying, it didn't stop feeling like that for me at white or blue belt. Like I still feel that now sometimes at black belt. Like, what am I doing? Why am I, especially on, when it's like a beautiful day or when you have traveled to compete and you're in a foreign city or foreign country, you're like, I could spend the day going and doing something far better than sitting in a stadium without any heating or cooling, waiting for my match for half of the day. And then, like you said, sometimes, it's over in like a couple of minutes and you're like, well, whatever. So those defeats, they definitely hurt a lot, like a lot more than the wins. So
I get nervous now, but it's kind of different. It kind of prepares me for what's going to happen rather than derails me from performing. Like I don't get that. Early on at white blue belt, I got that a lot. I'd perform poorly and I'd be like, it was just my mental state before the fight. It just killed me already before I got to the fight. I was exhausted. I didn't even want to fight. Like, you're fighting, but you don't really want to fight. So I don't really get those anymore. Like I did 2 striking fights last year. It's the first time I've done wrestling competitions, but I did 2 kickboxing fights and I got the same feelings, but it's actually really good. It helps me get warm, mentally ready for what's going to happen. So it doesn't have those adverse effects that it did early on. And I think I've kind of learned from it that don't let it get to that state because it's not really going to help. Like you got to sleep. Like some people tell me I haven't slept for a week. I'm like, what are you doing? It's just a local comp. No one cares. Just don't worry about it. I don't care. It doesn't, it's not going to really impact me on how you perform. Just you're paying for it. Go have some fun. But I can understand and relate to where he's coming from because it's happened to us as well.
It is funny when you have all those nerves and then you get somebody, one of your friends or your coach or a teammate or your opponent, and they're like, hey, man, we're paying for this, aren't we? You're like, oh, shit, that's right, we are. All this pain and discomfort, we're paying for it.
So
it does make you better, though, I reckon, for sure. Competing helps, immensely.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who denies that hasn't really gone. Like, look, it's the same at uni, like exams. It makes you better. Like I've been a teacher for over 20 years. It makes you better. The pressure, the fact that you need to go into a test, you get locked in, you get focused, you got to pass. You got to perform well to pass. And competition does the same. I mean, if you look at people who compete, if you look at them over 4 years to people who don't compete, the people who compete are a lot better at the end of those, say 2 years or 4 years or 6, whatever time frame you want to put to it. And I think the reason being is just those people competing are just more focused. They get that they don't take a lot of time off. They train more. Like there's days when they don't want to go training, but they go because they know there's a competition coming up. Whereas if you don't have competition, signed up somewhere, probably like, what, let's take a day off today, sit at home. I'm too tired. I'm exhausted. So, and in the end, over time, those people doing those things are just a lot better. And if that's your goal, and then, I mean, that's what you should do. If 100%. You want to get better, you got to put yourself into some competitions.
Yeah, it makes you accountable, I think, for sure. Yeah, look, we're nearly out of time, Murat. Thank you so much for doing this. You've been on my list for ages, and we saw each other at Fusion, and I was like, Murat, we got to get you on the podcast. So I'm so glad that we managed to finally do this.
Same here.
Brentos has a couple of little pop quiz questions that he asks here. You can make your answers as short or as long as you like.
All right, I'll try my best. I'm not good at these, so I'm warning you.
You're just saying how good it is to test yourself. Come on.
I was just going to say there's no right or wrong answer, but I think there is for a couple of these, so be careful.
All right.
All right, mate. iPhone or Samsung?
iPhone, yeah.
Strength or flexibility?
Good question. I'll go with strength.
All right. Good choice. Guard pull or takedown?
Takedown.
Ooh, there you go. Pasta or rice?
Rice.
Steak or chicken?
Me. Steak.
What was the first car you ever owned?
I can't even remember. It was something my dad bought for
That's a new one. That's a new question, Brett.
Oh God, it would have been a very, very old Toyota. It was awful. But he got me to school and back, so
That's good enough then. Gi or no gi?
both. I love both, to be honest.
Yeah, that's
Right now,
cool.
gi, because it's just easy on my body. The young
Yeah,
kids and no gi, I end up pulling up sore. So
it's so hard. So
yeah,
hard. All right, mate. I've got two more for you. These ones dictate whether the podcast goes out or not for the most part. I think we know the answer to this one. Can you drive a manual car?
yes,
Beautiful. We like that one. And then the last one, mate. Do you wear Crocs?
yes.
Oh, Kim.
But you hesitated. Was there a?
I know.
Okay, I don't always wear them, but I do.
Admit it or not.
I just what frustrates me is I can't clean the inside. Like there's holes, things get in there, whereas other kind of like Havanas, it's easier to wipe down. But I do wear them, yeah, and that's because of my kids. They've bought, they love them, so they ended
Everyone
up
who comes
loving
on
them.
and says, like, yeah, I wear them, they are so comfortable. I'm like, I'm sure they are, but we just can't do it, can we, Kim?
I
Like, now that
don't
we've
rate
given
it.
everybody so
I wear
much,
it.
so
I
much
don't
crap.
rate it.
All right,
I don't
okay.
like it.
We can still release this. Yeah, that's all right because he's doing it for the kids. He's doing it for the kids, Brentos.
It's only for
Yeah,
the kids.
exactly.
I promise.
Yeah. All right. Thanks once again, Murat, for coming
No
on.
worries.
Anybody that is interested to, we'll put the link to Murat's gym in the notes of the show. Yeah, as I said, it's been interesting that like we've had quite parallel journeys that we both started at Devine, at Absolute, and I guess sort of now at different gyms as well. So
You're pretty
yeah.
close though. You're at Dominance. I'm not too far now.
No,
so
that's
Yeah,
right.
that's for
That's
sure.
right. Yeah.
you
That's so jealous.
are you still in the same area?
Yeah, I'm in Bandura. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
not far. So yeah, we'll have to
I've moved to
catch up.
Alton. I was in Bandura, so I'm in
Yeah,
Alton.
yeah.
It's pretty close because you used to be in
Very
Greensboro.
close.
I remember.
Very close. So yeah, thank you so much. And as I said, I tried to get some dirt on you from our listeners, and I could not get any, which is terrible.
Hey, there was one.
Terrible to all the people I've reached out to. Where are these stories?
I thought Tiago would have mentioned this one though. Like you know how it wasn't as serious at the Beans. One time I did hide his belt, and he said he was asking about if you don't return my belt, I'll cancel the class. And we didn't return the belt, and he ended up canceling the class. And then we had to give his belt later on, and we said, "Okay, come on, let's go back to the class." And he was done. He was like, "That's it. I told you guys, don't muck around with belts." And
Yes.
and that was me who came on with the idea anyway. So I thought he would have mentioned that.
No, he didn't go. He was someone I reached out to. Tiago Stefanidi, if you're listening to this, why did you not give me more stories on Murat? But no.
That was probably one of the worst things I've done there. So
yeah. Thanks again, Murat,
no
for coming on. Brentos, you want to do the wrap up real quick?
Yeah, thank you for coming on, mate. Really nice to hear some of your stories and to get to know you a little bit better. Continued success with the gym, mate. I'm sure that will happen. So thank you for coming on. To everybody else, thank you for listening again to another great episode. Remember to like, rate, and share the podcast. Watch it on YouTube. Subscribe there. It would be awesome to get our YouTube views up too. So that would be really good. Other than that, we will see everybody next week on another episode of Roll or Die. Catch you then. Peace.
Bye.